We're over a week into the Operation Pillar of Defense, and I have to say, the only thing more frustrating than watching all your friends have to leave their families and go to the battlefield is having to argue to the entire world why Israelis have the right to exist. Because the whole cliche about Israel has the right to defend themselves is in essence the argument that when someone is shooting at you, you have the right to stop their shooting by shooting back and thus survive. What seems unfortunate is the way educated people sit and discuss this situation as if it started the day Israel assassinated Hamas's military wing leader, Ahmed Jabari. Yes, Ahmed was just sitting, drinking hot tea and smoking nargila when bang! Israel sent him to meet his maker, which by the way is not Allah. No, in fact, in my previous post, which I recorded just a few days before Operation Pillar of Defense started, I stated you would not be hearing about all the rockets being fired on Israeli schools and homes until Israel finally responded. And voila! Why is that? Maybe they don't want to hear about Hamas firing rockets at Israel and Israel doing nothing. Or maybe Israelis don't like to parade their wounded and dead civilians through the streets, singing "Death to the Arabs," and therefore it doesn't make really exciting TV. Or maybe it's this. I heard a CNN reporter talk about the assassination of Ahmed Jabari, and he says, to the Israeli, Ahmed was just a militant terrorist. To the Palestinian people, he was the fighter of a cause. Could you clarify what cause that is? Because Hamas is very clear about what their cause is, and this journalist just said cause so passionately. I'll bet if you followed him to the parking lot, he'd have a bumper sticker that said, "You'll say terrorism like it's a bad thing." But alas, there are those who are genuinely interested as to why Palestinian civilians are dying and what all this fighting is about. So if I may, Hamas and the Palestinians are two totally different groups. To confuse the two groups as one is to completely misunderstand the situation and to reach a false conclusion. Hamas is not a democratically elected government, it is a dictatorship. In fact, in 2006, Gaza held elections after Israel completely pulled out of it in 2005. In those elections, the Palestinian people gave the majority vote to Fatah and the minority vote to Hamas. This means that the president would have to come from the Fatah party and Hamas would have limited control in the parliament. Hamas managed to contain themselves about a year before they couldn't handle being number two anymore, and they did a coup. In the coup, they kicked out They kicked out some of the members. The rest of them they killed and tortured. And the president had to go to the West Bank, otherwise known as Judea and Samaria. Now, I'm no fan of Fatah because they make up stupid rules like if you sell a house to a Jew, we kill you. Or if your daughter needs help, medical help, and you go to an Israeli hospital, we kill you. But they generally are less aggressive in the world of rocket launching. So Hamas does this coup, they take over Gaza, and they impose what some people like to refer to as Sharia law. They pass even dumber laws like, if you sing in public, we kill you. And if you don't believe me, watch the footage in the link below that will show you Hamas raiding a wedding party and killing the groom because they were singing. Yes, Hamas loves their people. And Hamas is so convinced that the Palestinian people love them that they simply haven't held elections ever since. Israel, understanding that Hamas' control of Gaza means now they will focus their attention on their stated goal for existence, the destruction of Israel. So they place an internationally recognized blockade to make sure that everything that's being imported to Gaza is limited to things like fuel and food and medicine and clothes. Hamas, wanting to get out of this situation because it's so much harder to import weapons when you have a blockade, understands that they're going to need international assistance. And since it is unlikely that reasonable people will get on board the bandwagon of let's just destroy Israel because we hate it, they create the Palestinian civilian crisis. Now I say create because there was never a blockade on fundamental needs such as food and fuel. And it's funny that during this crisis time, they still managed to build these amazing hotels and malls. Remember, there's no tourism in Gaza, so these are being built for the locals. And there were reports coming from inside Gaza saying that Hamas would just limit the amount of fuel that the gas stations could have so that they could take pictures of long lines of pitiful Palestinians. In layman's terms, we call it propaganda. And I should note that there is another exit from Gaza through Egypt. And if Israel's blockade was so unfounded, Egypt could have easily opened up their border. Strangely, they didn't. because they weren't interested in having a bunch of terrorists with missiles on their border either. Anyway, in the meantime, they realized that in order to destroy Israel, they have to get the rest of the world to hate Israel too. So they fire missiles on Israeli population, knowing that Israel at some point has to respond. And it's all a setup because they'll fire the missile on top of a residential building or next to a kindergarten, knowing that Israel will want to respond by destroying the rocket launcher, because no rocket launcher, no missile. And then what happens is you have a bunch of Western people who are very busy with their lives, and all they see across the headlines is Israelis fire a kindergarten. And everyone gets mad, and thus Hamas assures that every military success is an overall success, and every military loss is still a PR success. The problem is not going to be solved by people saying, well, the people dying on both sides, there's problems on both sides. The problem will be solved when people understand that Hamas is not a friend to the Palestinian people. Hamas is firing rockets into Israel, where there are 1 million Israeli Arabs whose homes are just as much at risk as the Jewish homes. The key is freeing the Palestinians from the dictatorship of Hamas. No Hamas, no missiles from Gaza. No missiles from Gaza, no blockade. Capiche? I know, that means that Jews are still in the land. But hey, you can't have your terrorism and freedom too.